My name is Maccabi Dean. I was born in Philadelphia in 1923, that is to say, more than 90 years ago. And I come from a Zionist family. My father was here in the Jewish Legion with Allenby. My mother came in the Aliyah, the second Aliyah, in 1913, and they met here and they married, and he took her to America, where I was born. My mother's family came from Poland. They were a very well-to-do family, had a huge estate, and they made a living by, they bought a farm there, the estate, from a German whose daughter was killed by lightnings, and he went back to Germany and he sold a estate for 24,000 gold marks. The family made a living by hiring they called them muzikim, the Poles, and they chopped down the trees. They took the workers, they chopped down the trees. They made rafts, and they floated the trees down to Danzig. There was on the Bug River, there's a small Bug and a large Bug. This was a small. And they were a very religious family, my mother's family. They date back to 1,300, 700 years ago, to Germany, Rothenburg up there, the Tauber River. And 700 years is fully tabulated, written down, because they were all rabbis and all teachers and all that. And all the time I get messages from that your sixth grandmother was this, and your eighth grandfather was this, and okay, that's it. Anyway, about the time of Jabotinsky, I would say, there was a break with the religion, often with God, and they started the Aliyah. It's very important that those who came here were not religious. They had a sort of religious. I mean, they lit candles, I think, on Friday. And but this is very. It was a break, I think. They were not followers of Jabotinsky. They should have been, but they weren't. They came, and my uncles, my mother's family settled, founded Kvutzat Kinneret, and they lived there. I don't think there's any of them there now. And that's it. Okay, let's go back. At that time in America, among Jews, there was a movement to settle the soil. There was a school, I think, in Pennsylvania, where they trained Jews to be farmers. And my father went there, and then he enlisted in the Army in Canada to the English, to Allenby. And after the war, he came back, and they bought a farm in South New Jersey, and they raised chickens, and I was raised on that farm. was educated, strangely enough, for the first 8 years of my life by German teachers, American Germans. I still spoke German at home after 100 years in America. It's very, Jews stopped speaking Yiddish, but the Germans didn't stop. And I had a thorough German education. You say 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, it's not 5 minutes to 5, and it's not 5 minutes after 5. Ordnung muss sein. And always hard for me to grasp, but those Germans would have a Holocaust, okay, kill Jews, and until I thought that the Jews were, to Hitler, the Jews were the most important thing to conquer the world. It sounds a bit stupid, childish, but he needed, first of all, to have anti-Semitism, to unite Germany, which was half then Nazi and half communist. And the only thing which would unite the Germans was anti-Semitism. And he united Germany with the anti-Semitism. This is my personal opinion. It could be right, it could be wrong. And he needed a subject to turn the Germans into animals, something to hate. That was also the Jews. He needed their money to build his army. His big mistake was in not taking the Jewish scientist and put him in a concentration camp and using him to build an atomic bomb, because they were way ahead of the Americans in that. And if you'll check everything, the arms he built was all from the World War I. Nothing, the only difference was rockets, and the Germans were playing with rockets then. He couldn't concede that there is such a thing as a atomic bomb. This is my opinion. And first he needed the hatred, and then he needed the hatred, anti-Semitism all over Europe. Most of the countries agreed with him. Okay, let's, all right, this is my German teachers. We raised chickens on the farm, and I went to the university, and there I enlisted in the American Army. I was, I think, 20 at the time. And we left for, in the infantry, which we left for Europe in 1943 in November. It was trained to be in the infantry, and since I had some university education, they wanted to send me to school for languages, and I refused. And the officers thought I was crazy. We left in the ship from Virginia. It was a big ship, I think the Queen of Canada or something like that. 5,000 men in the ship, if I remember correctly. You're going to have to chop this up. And We landed in Casablanca. We were there for 3 days or 2 days. And we took the train to Algiers, to the French naval base there. And there I was trained to be a sapper, to plant mines and disarm mines and all that. And then we sailed to Italy, 3 days sleeping on the deck of the ship. And we were replacements in the company. The company got wiped out. And we came in, and I volunteered for the machine guns. Nobody else wanted to. And the boys there were wonderful. They were all from Minnesota. The regiment was from Minnesota, but they all got killed, and by the time I reached there, a handful were left. And the next bunch was from the rednecks from Georgia. And the rednecks were wonderful. They were the most important thing in battle is stability. You don't panic. And they didn't panic ever. Once I saw a boy panic. But as a rule, and like the Arabs built stone on stone. And here there was a gap, and rain came down and made a large puddle, a gap maybe this wide. And we look over there and we saw Germans. So there's Germans walking around 500, 600 meters away. They were behind enemy lines. So we didn't have food, we didn't have water. And all of a sudden an officer, I said already that 3 times wounded, officer stupidity. I was clean dressed, a brand new uniform. And he walked up and he says, "Look, there's Germans over there, open with a machine gun." And I said, "Look, sir, we're behind enemy lines. We don't have food. We don't have water. We bring up reinforcements so we can take this hill. They don't see us. Open machine gun, we'll have the mortars on us in a minute, 10 minutes. He says, "But they won't mind one shot." He grabs a rifle and gives it to me. Why me? Because I had glasses. He thought I could think or something. And I tried again, "Please, this rifle, it's the best rifle in the world," they tell us, but it shoots to the left, to the right, up in this. It's not very accurate. We're going to put a bullet among them, and then we're going to have them, the mortars falling on us. He says, "Shoot." So I shot. And so God help me, I knocked the German down. They brought out a big piece of canvas with the Red Cross on it, 4 soldiers, and they picked up my the wounded man or dead man and took him away. And then the officer says, "I think I'll be going. Do I have to? Can I run across this gap in the wall?" I said, "No, sir, you have to crawl." And that stupid son of a bitch crawled on his hands and feet in the mud. And this was the high point of my life and all my military service. How's it feel to be an officer? Let's have the next action where I was wounded. We were advancing towards Rome, and I don't know why they put us in the body. the 34th Division and I think the 45th Division. A long body like this. And the Germans, being Germans, had the thing zeroed in with the mortars. And within 5 minutes out of the, I would say 180 men of the unit of the company, 16 or 17 escaped without wounds. The whole company was wiped out due to, I don't want to mention officer stupidity, but the Germans were retreating deliberately, and they zeroed in every place where from which they could be attacked. This, what was his name? The German general. I think he became a field marshal. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I was wounded badly in my right leg. The mortar bomb fell on me, but I made a hole in the ground. My foot was in the hole, and I didn't feel a thing, but I was in the flash of the explosion. I was bleeding badly here, and here, see this little thing? Big as a kernel. I wanted to scream from the pain. And I walked on the leg, it was dead. I can feel nothing there. To the hospital, no, to the first aid, and they put me in an ambulance to the hospital. The hospital was filled up, and they sent us to another hospital, and then we went back to the first one. And the driver left us off in the middle of the street, and nurses came out and took us in. And I was lying on the bed on the operating table. And in walks the surgeon. He looked about 15, 16 years old, a fat little boy. He looks at my leg and he says, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And I looked at him and I looked at the nurse, and she looks at me. So it's bad, but it's not an oh my God business. And he screams, "Nurse, hypodermic," and she says, "Count backwards from 10, 9, 8, 7. I woke up at 7, I think, or 6, and I was on the way to heaven. I was moving through clouds. And all the time this "oh my God" was ringing in my ears. And I was going to heaven. And I said, "Maccabi, you're no longer an agnostic. You're going to heaven." And all of a sudden I thought, this is awful, noisy for heaven. It's full of potholes. And I raised my head and I looked out a window, and I was in the airplane being evacuated to Naples, I think. It had to be Naples. The other time I was evacuated to Rome. Look, it's 70 years ago, more than 75 years ago. Anyway, that was the end of my trip to heaven. And then I was in the hospital. The first surgeon was what he called emergency stuff. The hospital I was operated on, and either 42 or 44 stitches to put it together. Whatever it was went right through my leg without hitting the bone. Here, you want to see the signs? Oh, come on, be a sport. Here, look at this hole. It went out here. Anyway, I was there, and then they sent me to a rehabilitation place. Come there, I don't know, and register, and I could walk then. And the officer says, you take a rifle, and every morning you're walking 5 miles in a circle, return the rifle, and you're free for the day. Now this is funny. And I go back to the tent, a real tent, we didn't sleep on the ground, with cots and a blanket, a real blanket. I should have told you this before. We always slept 2 soldiers together under one blanket in the field. One blanket was a mattress, the other blanket was we covered ourselves, and on top of this we put what they call a tent half or something. Right. So that was a buddy system. I took care of my buddy and he took care of me. And I forgot something when this bomb had hit me. It wiped out the whole machine gun squad. And one of the boys had the watch. There was one watch in the whole platoon, which I stole from a drunken soldier. And it's, you're standing there in the dark, you're looking out, and 10 minutes you think you've been there 3 hours. The watch saved the goddamn platoon from, I don't know, saved it anyway. And his buddy walked up, took the watch off his hand. His buddy had slept with him. And I looked at him and he says to me, the dead can't tell time. These are the boys from the rednecks. His friend is dead. Okay, we move on. Now, I also shouldn't say this. We once got a bunch of replacements from New York. I don't think they were Jews, I don't know what they were, but they were city boys, and they cracked up. Okay, the war was fought in the American Army by the rednecks that couldn't read or write, and I was the only one in the platoon who read, except for one boy. He wanted to be a school teacher. His name was Taylor. He got killed on the advancing towards Rome. Okay, I can free for the rest of the day. And the boy in the bed next to me, he says, let's go to town. I said, I don't have any money. We didn't get paid in the Army. We get paid once every 6 months, and we all the money and then get paid, and they used to say, send it home to your people. So we never had any money. Anything we couldn't buy, there was no place where you could buy things. And where was I? And the boy in the next bed says, look, take your blanket, go down to the perimeter of the camp. You'll see an Italian there. He'll give you $10 for the blanket. And I says, but I want to sleep under a blanket. He says, there'll be a blanket here when you come back. The next day I sold the blanket and went to town. This went for maybe a month, 6 weeks. And all of a sudden I get appear in front of an officer about it. Comes in, and I said, oh, I'm sending you back to the front. I said, no, I don't feel like it. And he says, look, I got a pile of slips here with your name, a pile of slips here, a pile of slips here. Here you go down to the port and you board a ship to the front. Here you report to the stockade, the prison. I advise you to go to the front because in the army stockade, you won't last very long. Anyway, I go down to the port, and there was my sergeant, wonderful boy from Pennsylvania. His name was Wester. At casino, at the casino, he got to leave. A few days off. He came back and he says, I got this horn, I rode her bareback 7 times. Is this going on? I'm telling you, I was in the real army. And after a week or 10 days, he says, boys, there's something wrong with the waterworks. And they cured him of something, I don't know what. He came back. Anyway, I go down to the port, and this was the same sergeant there, also wounded. And he was drunk, terribly drunk. We go on a ship, and it's a small ship, 1 tank on the thing, an English coastal vessel. And officer, the guy, captain, I don't know what, he says, boys, don't smoke. The hold is full of ammunition and will blow us all up. And my sergeant inside the hold. Nothing happened. It didn't blow up. We came back to, we went on the boat a few hours and we got off at a place called Piombino, something like that. It was the 17th of September. This I remember, or something happened the next day. And right away we were giving, I got a machine gun and the other boys got rifles, and we went up the hill, 751, empty, no Germans. And I thought, I'm going to sleep on the ground today. I saw some straw up there. I'll go out and take it and make myself a bed on the earth. And I go up and there's a German soldier, sticks a rifle in my stomach. Not in my stomach, it was this far away. I look, it's a young boy like me. And I forgot, when I went up the hill, I took off my pistol. I didn't have no arms. And I looked at him and I said, "Kommen Sie." Come along. In German. It's 2 words I remember from my childhood. And I walk away. He was from the Wehrmacht, no Nazi. Wehrmacht are gentlemen. They don't shoot you in the back. I walked away and I turned back and I said, "Kommen Sie." I put my hands out and he gave me the rifle. All right. So we took him back to camp, and I turned him into the first sergeant I saw. I didn't want to turn him in myself because I would ask, why didn't you take out your gun and get killed? I didn't have a gun. I would get court-martialed for leaving, but I thought I'd get court-martialed. Anyway, they tied him to a tree, this young boy, and we had Italian workers there, partisans, communists, I think. And we couldn't hit the soldiers' enemy. We used the Italian. And he knocked his teeth out. He swore there was no soldiers there. He was the only one. He got lost. Anyway, the next day, we left the top of that hill without leaving somebody, the small units to see, watch. Some of the Germans come and shoot in the air. The officers left the thing bare. And we walked up the hill, not in a combat formation. And they opened up with the machine gun. And they did. I was a machine gun the first hit. It should have been an officer, but the officers had no badges, no insignia. You couldn't tell if it was a captain, lieutenant, or anything. They were very careful not to wear. Enemy should know who they were. Anyway, I started running. I got hit here, and I think one in the back, and one here. And I reached the hospital. What happened then? I was laying on a stretcher outside the hospital. This was the 18th of September. And I didn't eat a whole day, and they were taking care of I understood the hospital was taking care of the really wounded. I mean, what was here and here, there was just blood, and here I don't know what the hell it was. And what the hell happened? The chaplain, it's a Katzim dot. It's not Katzim dot. It means social worker. He comes up to me and he says, Maccabi, by my name, in the afternoon. Can I get you anything? I said, yes, I'd like a couple slices of bread. I haven't eaten the whole day. And he says to me, Maccabi, you can't eat today. I said, why not? He says, it's Yom Kippur. Okay, I didn't eat that day. I took the bullet out and I don't know what else. I said, I got a bullet here too. And he picks this thing up. He says, no, there's no bullet. I have it here. And there was no bullet there. I said, it knocked me down. Also, I said, you're cutting my pants off. I don't have any pants. He says, I'll get you another pair of pants. And this is, this is the American Army. We used the same pants, same outfit we had in South Carolina in the heat. We had in the hills of Italy, full of ice and snow. We had a jacket, a wonderful jacket. We had clubs, which were wonderful, and a scarf, which were wonderful. Anywhere was there? So they operated and through and the mud, and I was so happy. I mean, and I said, how stupid can you be today? You can run fast until somebody picks up a rifle, open fire with a machine gun on you're on the other side. I didn't, anyway, so we waited for the mortars, and all of a sudden I hear psst, and the bomb falls right next to me, and I got wounded here very slightly. I took it out with a knife, little pieces, and that was the end. When we had to retreat, and according to a book I have here on Casino, it took 2 or 3 months until the army returned to take the Abbey. When we were there were no Germans there. There was a window there. If there was Germans, it would be in this window watching. There were no Germans there. And one of the boys from another unit who went through it came out and says it's full of 1 or 2 or 3,000 Italians hiding. And we looked everywhere for some sign of Germans. The Germans, there's a cigarette butt, tin can, shitting in the corner. None of it, everything. It was only Italians. I'm saying this because bombing it was the only reason we could see was it was a symbol, something like the Marne in the First World War. They shall not cross or shall not advance this. It was a symbol that had to be a symbol of defeat or something like that. I'm just guessing. Then where did we go? Where was the next action? Where the hell was it? A bullet, and it couldn't be a bullet, a perfectly round little hole in my glasses. It couldn't be a bullet this way. Anyway, the helmet, I went this way. It couldn't be a bullet. It was a piece of chip of stone or something. And that was the end of my fighting days. They sent away for a pair of glasses, and by the time glasses came, the war was over. I asked, they needed people to send the boys home. So I asked to work in the office and not go stay in the Army. And they gave me a job there, typing. And we waited 5 months from May to November, I think. I don't remember. For a ship. And one day I was typing up release papers for soldiers being sent home, and one boy that was leaving, it said, did willfully and in full possession of his senses deprive two human beings of their lives. I says, Jesus Christ, he's going home before me. This murderer. He probably killed Italians, not important. So we waited 5 months, and it was a camp near Pisa. It was on the seashore. What the hell happened? We were supposed to get a can of beer every day, so we never got it. And there we got 5 cans a day. And they had every evening they had playing records and all this business. We used to listen and get drunk. And one of the officers had a wonderful idea of bringing some Italian girls to dance. They brought the girls in, and the boys grabbed them and ran for the door. We just started raping them. I don't think they raped any, but they tried to. That was the end of meeting Italians. All during the time there, we never saw an Italian newspaper. We never heard the radio. Once I heard it in the kitchen. They had a radio, and I heard broadcast from Berlin, turn the record Bruno, and all sorts of American country music. I knew who was doing the funny country boys. What else? The high car. I went into the Army with one filling. I came out, I had either 19 or 25 fillings put in by the Army, janked out 3 or 4 teeth. My mouth was rotten with teeth. Once during my whole stay there, we had ate meat, real meat. The captain, who was a real officer, came from Kentucky, German Dufka. The name is Smith, blue eyes and blonde hair, and he took the Jeep and ran over a cow. And that evening we each got a hamburger. This is the real officer. And in the field, we got 6 cans. 3 were crackers, cigarettes, candy or 2, something like that. Something to make water drink. It was always lemon in the winter, and in the summer it was coffee, I think, or tea, I forget. Anyway, we were not allowed to start a fire. We did, when the Germans were retreating, they left behind a lot of little things like a block of sugar they used to put in tea. And you used to light those with a cigarette, and it would warm up a cup of water. It didn't boil it. And every day we got and the 3 cans. One was beans, which were delicious. The other 2 were, one I think was grease, car grease with potatoes and carrots, and the other was grease with carrots and potatoes. We never ate it. We used to throw them away. We used to live on the crackers and the beans. In mess, where we were off the lines, we used to get bread, as much bread as we wanted. A cup of black coffee, a pint full of sugar, real coffee, no milk. What else? We had egg powder. We had potato powder. We had some sort of, I think it was wood, called spam. It was horrible. You couldn't eat it. It was supposed to be pieces of pork. They like they do here, they cut away the meat and they'll throw it away in the store. This was supposed to be that. It wasn't. One of the boys worked in the spam factory. He said it was full of pieces of ham, real pieces pushed together into a thing. Okay, anyway, that's where my teeth went from the... Once we were stationed with the British, that's, oh Christ, I don't know how you're going to... we were... Christ, I left out something so important. We were at Anzio, and we were in the deep Wadi. In the Wadi, the people before us had made little caves where we could sleep. The Germans couldn't touch us. And there was water at the bottom. We could drink the water. And one day, one of the boys walked down towards the hills, and he found a dead German there, body rotten, was blocking the water, and the water was going over his body, and we were drinking that water. Okay, I'll give you another horrible thing. We were advancing once in the hills. We're not attacking, and we came upon a dead German soldier with head cut off here like a guillotine. No head. And on his back was a loaf of bread. He was lying on his stomach, tied with a string, and a big can. And so I was trained as a sapper. The only place he could have a bomb would be under him. So I went over and I cut the string and I took the bread and the can and I brought it back and it was covered with this blood. And my buddy, we took a knife and cut away the pieces of blood. And we had a piece of bread and we threw the pieces of bread on the ground with the blood. And we offered the other boys, they wouldn't eat it. So we cut it in half and we ate each a half. It was black bread, chamutz, sour, wet, not moist. It's a lovely taste, I'm telling you. And we ate it, and up comes the officer, this wonderful officer, this German-American. And he says, we'd opened the can. It was full of plums, white and purple, and full of syrup. And he comes up and he looks at us and he says, what do you men have there? We said, please, enjoy yourself. And he took out a spoon from his boot. And we kept the spoons in the boot and the knife too. And he ate exactly 1/3, drank 1/3 of the juice. And he started to walk away. And he started to walk away. He saw the bread with the blood. He picked it up. He started chewing on it. And he spat it out. And he said, German blood is very salty. How about that? I'm talking about the food in the army. This was an officer eating that shit. And, all right, he was an officer who was with the men. Came from Kentucky, I think. And he says, it's not true about the black girls. It's the best girl, best fuck in the world. Anyway, it's the one that ran over the cow, a small cow. He comes back running a half hour later, and he says, saddle up, we're moving out to the coast. Okay, wonderful. We come down to the coast, and we're in the English section. And we had English food. And we got bully beef, real bully beef, real beef. The English ate it. And we had cheese, real yellow cheese. And I had bacon. We ate it raw. Once during all these times, we ate a hot meal in the lines. We're supposed to get a hot meal every day. Okay. We took the blood off. No, okay. We took the blood off. The officer didn't. We had a chocolate, one-day ration in the field. Once we got one. I was on leave once, and some Italian came up, and he said he had one, and he says, look, the officers charged me 70 cents for this. It should be much cheaper. The Italians had it. The Italians and the officers sold everything. I can't prove that. We landed with one pair of pants on us and one pair of pants and a kit bag with a real coat, with a pair of socks, with underwear. We wore the same clothes of South Carolina. We didn't change it. until the end of the war, when I won a lottery to go to Switzerland. Anyway, let's get back to the, I don't know how we're going to do with this. We'll get back to the English. And up comes an officer. We dug in, and he says, "Look, anybody you see coming towards you, shoot." And one of the boys said, "But the Black Division is out there." He said, "You got your orders. Shoot." No, nothing happened. So later we learned, I don't know if it's true or not, the battalion of Germans armed with what they called Schmeissers, machine pistols. 600 of them cut through the whole Black Division and split it in half. It could be true, it's probably not true. But we were asked to open fire on the Black Division. And I looked around at the boys, and I saw them all smiling. I said they came from Georgia. Georgia, they hated the blacks. They would do it. And I think this is the reason they took our company with the Georgia boys, rednecks, down there. They would do it. Anyway, nothing happened. But as long as we were there, we ate wonderful food, English food. What else? I won this trip to Switzerland. A week, I think. Now listen, the Italian woman sits down with me. She says, that's the problem with the Germans. Each Italian has one mind. We can't get two minds together. We each are boss, and we each know better. Typical Jews in this country. The Germans, they each have one mind. Two Germans have one mind. Three Germans have a mind and a half. And they work together. That's why they're so victorious. Listen, these are descendants of the Romans. At least I think. Is that the story or not? The officers were on a stage and they talked about the atomic bomb. And I was the only one in the company that ever heard about it. I used to read science fiction. They brought in the teachers of Italian. I studied Italian. I even got a diploma. I have a sharp knowledge of Italian. That's a bunch of shit. The only thing I remember today is vaffanculo. And this, or this. This they taught the whole army. Anything to keep the boys happy. These were not professional soldiers. You had to entertain them. And we had to sing every evening. One day we boarded a small Liberty ship, I think they called it. The thing was just a hull with the bunks on both sides. English were there, and we got on, and the first thing they did was give us breakfast. Little boiled potatoes, boiled with ham, and for dessert we had delicious little crackers with raisins in them. That was for breakfast. For the middle of the day, we had the same thing. For supper, we had the same thing. We took us 18 days to reach Virginia. We went by to Algiers, this port, the French naval base. What the hell was it? Omar Law.
Oran.
Huh?
Oran.
Iran, no. Oran, Ken, Oran. We were on a hill, and down there the port, it was a beautiful scene. I also remember eating little red, yellow oranges this big with the skin on. Didn't peel them. I'm sorry, anyway, I had an extra pair of socks. The socks are always wet and my toes were blue. It's the army and the cinema is not exactly the army I know. And I picked up enough Italian to talk to Italian a little bit here, a little bit there, and they all told me the same thing. The Germans were so correct. Correct. And I said, the Americans, and they wouldn't answer me. We liberated everything we had. Anything we took, we liberated it. We stole it. And this German soldier that wouldn't shoot me in the back, this was Wehrmacht, this was not the SS. A place called Indian Town, Indian Hill something. And there we lined up, and they asked us what we did in the army, and I told them I machine gun. And he says, were you wounded? I said, yeah, I have this big hole in my leg and a bullet here. He says, you'll never get any money out of that. I says, well, write it down, please. So he wrote it down, and later I was informed of a 20% no liability, something for this, and the 10 for this, and they later took it away when I had to prove that my leg didn't improve, the arm is perfect. But what was that this part here for years was frozen, no feelings. Now it's the exact opposite. I used to take a cigarette, and I used to smoke then, and grind it out on my hand. And it made a horrible smell. And all the girls used to turn their head away. Very sweet, huh? What else? A record in Pennsylvania up in the hill, a record of Verdi's Triumphant March. Verdi, okay. With a record. That was all. There's two armies. One which fights, and one which gets everything on the platter. I volunteered. But it never occurred to me anything else. If I was smart, I would have tried maybe get into the Navy. I would volunteer for the submarines. Not that I'm a great warrior or anything. I'm a coward like everybody else. And let me tell you, I only met two really brave people who were willing to endanger their life needlessly. One was a boy from New Mexico. He claimed to be a Mexican. He spoke bad Spanish, and he was like this, and he used to always lead off the attack. He always volunteered. It's crazy. And he used to run and go down on his hit, on his tachet, on his legs, and aim his rifle and shoot. You know what I mean? He used to, like a white person does, he can't do it unless he practices. So sitting on his heels, and you come up and you shove him, you can't move him. He rocks a little bit, but if you move a man standing up, he goes back, unless he fights with you. Anyway, I wasn't there. He got a bullet here. And I don't know where I was, in the hospital probably. And another one charged up a hill, a boy with a German accent. And a shell came and hit him in the chest. And I'll swear I saw light through him. But it couldn't be. It could only be my imagination. This was a nice thing about the war. They took care of my teeth. And the government was faced with 17 million soldiers, most of them young. Oh, something else. I don't know if it's for this. They came back, they wanted work. I mean, and especially those who were in the fighting army. I mean, you couldn't treat them that way. They couldn't go around looking for work. So anybody who would be accepted by a university was given $50 a month, free tuition, and he could live on the $50 a month with, he could live, barely get along, and the idea was that he would also go out and work part-time. They all went to anybody went to the university who went. I went back to the university. I had with the pension, Army pension, I had $105. I used to also work typing. I could type then. And I stayed there for 2 years, and I don't know, I was studying journalism, and they began talking about ethics and morality or stuff like that. And I says, yeah, first, there's no such thing in journalism. All the journalists are a bunch of thieves. Seriously, we steal from each other. And here, and I worked on the Jerusalem Post for 36 years. The boys used to meet in the afternoon and compare notes. We saved ourselves work. Anyway, I said to hell with it. I could finish in 6 weeks. The condition also was, if you go to a university, you have to go continuously. The only way to break that, I went back, I started in the winter, I stayed a whole summer, a whole winter, and then came another. You should thank God that the British were here, not the Americans. Not the American troops I knew. You're taking a picture or what?
No. I'm recording.
You're recording. What else? And I came to they brought in the teachers of Italian. I studied Italian. I even got a diploma. I have a sharp knowledge of Italian. That's a bunch of shit. The only thing I remember today is vaffanculo. And this, or this. This they taught the whole army. Anything to keep the boys happy. These were not professional soldiers. You had to entertain them. And we had to sing every evening. Jerusalem Post after 4 years. I had to learn a little Hebrew without any help, and I stayed there 36 years until they kicked me out. Obligatory. You have to go out on pension at 65. But I wanted to go out when I was 60, and they refused. So I know something about war. I know something about morale. And that's it.